The sky beyond the viewport burned in streaks of violet and amber, the reflection of a gas giant's storms twisting endlessly below. Inside the Varkul Prime Academy, the air hummed with sterile perfection, ozone, alloy, and the faint hiss of circulating atmospheres from 100 different worlds. Aria Dren walked through the main atrium with quiet precision. Her steps made no sound against the alloy floor, yet her presence drew eyes. Whispers followed her like a breeze that couldn't decide if it was afraid or curious. "Human," someone murmured in clicks and hisses. "From the Deathworld," another voice laughed. "Surprised they sent one of those here. Should have left her on her feral rock." Aria didn't look. She had learned on the first day that acknowledgement only fed them. It wasn't fear that guided her silence, it was calculation. Her instructors on Earth had drilled it into her: never waste movement. Never let emotion lead. The Academy was a marvel. A sprawling ring of black metal orbiting Thyrax 7, suspended above endless storms that could swallow continents. Within its corridors, species from every corner of the Galactic Accord studied, competed, and maneuvered for prestige. They called it an academy, but everyone knew it was a battlefield of intellect and dominance. For most cadets, humanity was a curiosity. For some, an insult. The Drexians were the worst. Towering, scaled, bred from war and conquest, they regarded humans as biological accidents, beasts that clawed their way out of gravity wells too violent for civilized life. Among them was Varkul Vorn, combat division leader, who had already made his opinion known. "Deathworlder," he had said the first time he saw her. "You shouldn't exist." She had met his stare that day, said nothing, and walked away. The silence had stung him more than words ever could. Now, days later, she sat in the Academy's observatory classroom, listening to the low drone of alien lecturers speaking of fleet coordination and orbital defense. Holographic diagrams floated between them, intricate, shifting, luminous. Aria absorbed every detail. Humans learned fast. Necessity had taught them that. On Earth, mistakes didn't get second chances. The instructor, a translucent creature made of light and tendrils, gestured toward her. "Cadet Dren, your world practices kinetic warfare, yes? How would your people respond to an orbital siege of this scale?" Dozens of alien eyes turned toward her. Aria set down her stylus and rose halfway from her seat. "We'd bring it down." The room went still. "You mean the enemy fleet?" the instructor asked. Aria shook her head once. "The moon they're orbiting." The silence that followed carried weight. The Drexians sneered. A few of the more tactical races exchanged uneasy looks. The instructor blinked, unsure if she was joking. Aria sat down again, voice quiet but steady. "And the battlefield itself. It's faster than diplomacy." Her words echoed long after class ended. That evening, she ate alone in the cafeteria, an oval chamber of glass and chrome overlooking the clouds of Thyrax 7. She always sat near the viewport. The others gathered in clusters, trading laughter and challenge. Human solitude was considered weakness here. Across the room, a group of Drexians watched her with sharp predatory interest. Their scales glimmered under the artificial light. Varkul stood among them, his amber eyes fixed on Aria like a weapon waiting for a reason. "She doesn't even eat real food," one of them hissed. "Processed sludge, disgusting." "She pretends not to hear," another said. Varkul leaned back, voice a low growl. "She hears. They always do. Deathworlders survive by listening." Aria took a slow breath and focused on the datapad before her. Her meal sat untouched. She was reading a tactical brief on gravitational shear forces, light years away from the snickering voices that tried to pierce her calm. A tray clattered down beside her. The sound was deliberate. A shadow fell across the table. She didn't have to look up to know who it was. Varkul's bulk filled the periphery of her vision. His voice rumbled like shifting boulders. "You think silence makes you strong, human?" Aria scrolled another line of text. "It keeps the noise out." The aliens nearby turned, drawn by the tension. Varkul grinned, teeth like polished blades. "You act above us." "I've seen your kind fight. Animals. You hide that same savagery behind quiet eyes." She finally looked up. Her expression was unreadable. "You mistake control for weakness." That earned a chorus of laughter from his companions. Zarkel leaned closer, the table creaking under his arm. "Control? You're surrounded by species that could crush you between their claws. You're alive because this academy forbids violence." Aria's tone didn't change. "Then you should be grateful for the rule." He blinked, momentarily thrown by her stillness. There was no mockery in her voice, only fact. And facts, especially from a Deathworlder, carried a weight that scraped against his pride. One of his lieutenants, a smaller Drexian, barked out, "Maybe she's right. Without the rules, we'd have to rebuild the cafeteria after she explodes." Laughter rippled again. Zarkel slammed his hand on the table. The metal dented under his palm. Aria didn't flinch. The tray jumped. Her cup toppled and spilled pale nutrient fluid across her datapad. She calmly lifted it away from the spill and continued reading. "You'll look at me when I speak," he said. She didn't. "You've already said too much." The laughter died this time. Something in her tone wasn't threat. It was statement, absolute and quiet. A few nearby cadets shifted uneasily. Zarkel's tail lashed once, scarring the floor. His companions stepped back. Even they could feel it. The sudden gravity of silence that radiated from the girl who hadn't raised her voice, hadn't moved, and yet seemed to weigh down the air itself. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Then he leaned close enough for his breath to brush her ear. "You'll regret that, Deathworlder." Aria closed her datapad and looked at him fully for the first time. Her eyes were silver gray, cold as frost on steel. "No," she said. "You will." He froze, not from fear, but from something stranger, something primal. The look she gave him wasn't challenge or rage. It was pity. Zarkel straightened, forcing a smirk. "We'll see." He turned sharply, signaling his followers. The Drexians left, the tension trailing behind them like smoke. When the room emptied, Aria sat still for several minutes, staring at the reflection of stormlight in the viewport glass. Her hands were steady, her breathing measured. She could still hear her mentor's voice from Earth. "A predator doesn't snarl to prove itself. It waits. When it moves, the noise comes from the bones breaking." She set down her datapad and stood. Tomorrow would bring another confrontation. She knew it the same way she knew how to shoot, fight, and survive. It was instinct, but for now she simply whispered to the swirling storms below. "Not yet." Outside, lightning rippled across the endless clouds of Thyrax 7, and the station lights dimmed as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The following day dawned over Thyrax 7 with the same roiling storms, yet inside Varkul Prime Academy something had shifted. Conversations in corridors paused when Aria walked past. Whispers had evolved from curiosity to speculation. Even species that usually ignored humans began to watch her more closely, as though sensing the taut wire under her calm surface. The mess hall at mid-cycle was a wide amphitheater of transparent walls. Outside, the gas giant boiled, casting amber light over rows of metallic tables. Inside, the air smelled faintly of ozone and sterilized protein. Students clustered in their usual knots, species segregated more by instinct than by rule. Aria sat alone near the viewport, datapad open, a tray of untouched rations beside it. Her posture was deliberate, back straight, legs tucked under, eyes fixed on her reading. She didn't need to look to know she was being watched. Across the hall, Zarkel stood with 4 Drexian cadets, their scales gleaming under the artificial light. He had been waiting for this moment. Yesterday's exchange had rattled him. His pride felt clawed open. The whispers from other species hadn't helped. Drexians didn't forgive public embarrassment. "She thinks she can shame me," he muttered in his native tongue. One of his companions hissed a warning. "The Academy forbids violence," Zarkel's tail lashed. "Then we won't call it violence." He hefted his shoulders, inhaled, and strode toward the human. His comrades followed at a distance, eager for spectacle but unwilling to risk sanction. The hum of conversation dropped as he approached. Even the multi-limbed Ventari stopped mid-gesture, their frilled ears swiveling to catch the sound of Drexian claws on alloy. Aria turned a page on her datapad. Xar. Kel planted both hands on the table and leaned forward until his shadow swallowed her meal tray. Still reading, Deathworlder? His voice was a low vibration through the steel. She did not look up. Still posturing? A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd, then died as Zarkel's claws gouged tiny scars into the table. He bent closer, letting his breath wash over her. I gave you a chance yesterday. I offered you a path to bow out. You chose defiance. Aria set the datapad down, face expressionless. You confused silence with surrender. His eyes narrowed. Then speak. Tell me what you are, little predator, before I tear apart this illusion of civility. She met his gaze calmly. I am a cadet. I am here to learn, and I'm warning you to step away. The crowd's collective intake of breath was almost audible. The words were quiet, but carried a weight that pressed against the walls. Zarkel straightened slightly, his tail thrashing. You think this academy protects you? It protects me. He circled her table like a stalking beast, claws scraping the floor. Humans survived their death world by accident, not by merit. You're a myth wrapped in soft tissue. Aria followed him with her eyes, but did not move. If that comforts you, hold on to it. His hand lashed out suddenly, seizing her tray and sending it spinning across the floor. Protein paste splattered against a far wall. Gasps rippled outward. She still didn't rise. You will stand when I address you, he growled. No, she said, and her voice was almost a whisper. You'll wish I hadn't, one of the Drexians muttered nervously. Even among their kind, there was an unspoken instinct about Deathworlders. Don't press too hard. But Zarkel's pride drowned instinct. He reached down and clamped a clawed hand around her wrist. His grip was iron, talons pricking skin. The mess hall froze. Devices lifted into discrete recording angles. Someone whispered, he touched her. Aria's eyes dropped to his hand. Blood welled in tiny crescents where his claws pierced her. She inhaled slowly through her nose, counted 3 heartbeats, and exhaled. Release me, she said softly. Zarkel tightened his grip. Or what? You'll glare me to death? Her gaze rose to meet his. Gray-silver, unblinking. You're about to find out what Deathworlder actually means. The hum of the ventilation system became the only sound. Even the gas giant beyond seemed to hold its storms. Inside Aria's mind, training unspooled like a diagram. Her instructor's voices surfaced. Control, precision, one strike, decisive. Make it clean, make it undeniable. She measured his stance, his center of gravity, the angle of his neck. Her heart rate remained steady. I'm not here to fight you, she said, voice barely above a murmur. I'm here to represent my species, he smirked. Then represent it crawling, she tilted her head. You don't understand. This is me holding back, another gasp from the onlookers. The Drexians shifted uneasily. Zarkel laughed, but the sound cracked. Then stop holding back. Not yet, she whispered. He dragged her arm toward him, trying to pull her up from her seat. Her body didn't budge. Stand, human! Aria's lips curved in something that was not a smile. No. She twisted her wrist just enough to loosen his grip, then set her palm flat on the table again. Her voice reached only him now, a thread of sound under the crowd's held breath. Walk away, Zarkel, this is your last chance. His nostrils flared. He leaned close enough that his forehead almost touched hers. You're weak, he hissed. Just a story. Her eyes flicked once to the viewport, then back. Stories outlive the storytellers. For an instant, neither moved. The crowd watched the tableau. Alien giant gripping seated human. The entire hall balanced on a hair's edge. A low hum began in the corner, where a group of insectoid cadets clicked their mandibles nervously. Someone whispered, Security's coming! Another muttered, Too late! Aria's left hand slid from the table and hovered just above her lap. She flexed her fingers once, an almost imperceptible motion. Every muscle in her body aligned like a predator poised to strike. You don't want this, she said. I do, he replied, and then stillness. The silence thickened until it felt like liquid. The light from Thyrax 7 flickered across the transparent walls, staining everything gold and crimson. Aria spoke again, voice so low only he could hear it. "Then remember I warned you." Her pupils narrowed slightly, and something unreadable passed over her face. A switch thrown. A predator stepping out of camouflage. Zarkel felt it, but his pride held him frozen. The mess hall's doors hissed open, and 2 security drones floated in, blue lenses scanning. They paused at the edge of the crowd, analyzing the confrontation but not yet intervening. Aria's breathing slowed further, her pulse steady as a metronome. One strike. Decisive. Clean. Zarkel grinned, mistaking her stillness for surrender. He lifted his other hand, claws poised to grip her shoulder. "You'll learn your place," he snarled, her voice cut through him like a blade. "So will you." The drones drifted closer, but the crowd had already started filming. Holographic lenses hovered above, capturing every twitch of muscle. This was no longer a scuffle. This was a moment destined for retelling across systems. Zarkel's claws descended. Aria's gray eyes tracked the movement without fear. She inhaled once, a sound almost like the first note of a storm. "Last warning," she said. He laughed, baring his fangs. "Do it." Her hand tensed under the table. Everything in the hall went silent. Even the drones paused mid-scan. The line had been crossed. Aria's gaze shifted slightly, her expression unreadable. Inside, her mind snapped into cold clarity. "There would be no more warnings," she whispered. Barely audible. "Then don't blink. The chapter ends here." With the weight of an entire academy holding its breath, the predator coiled and ready, and the alien bully one heartbeat away from discovering why Deathworlders are feared. The moment fractured like glass. One instant, Zarkel stood towering over the human girl, his hand rising to grab her. The next, something shifted, small, almost invisible, but primal. A ripple of stillness spread through the mess hall, the kind that descends just before a predator strikes. Aria's eyes met his for a fraction of a second. No rage, no fear, just inevitability. Then she moved. To the untrained eye, she didn't seem to move at all. Her shoulder rolled barely an inch, her wrist flicked the width of a breath, and yet the sound that followed was unmistakable. Crack! The Drexian froze. His eyes went wide, mouth parting soundlessly. His body stiffened, then folded. He collapsed in a heap beside the table. The dull thud of armored scales hitting alloy echoed through the hall. His neck was bent at a precise, unnatural angle. The silence afterward felt alive, thick and electric, humming through the air. Aria hadn't stood. She hadn't even lifted her gaze. Her hand rested back on the table, calm. Fingers still curled where she'd caught the movement and turned it against him. Gasps tore through the crowd. A dozen alien languages whispered disbelief. The security drones scanned the scene, their blue lights pulsing faster. "Vitals negative," one droned mechanically. "Subject deceased," a voice in the back stammered. She didn't even get up." Aria exhaled once, slow and quiet, as though releasing a held breath. Her heartbeat barely rose. She wiped a faint streak of greenish Drexian blood from her wrist with a napkin and set it aside. "Self-defense," she said simply. No one replied. No one dared. The Academy mess hall, normally a riot of chatter and scent and species, was dead still. A single Drexian heartbeat ago, they had all been watching for spectacle. Now they were witnesses to legend. One of the smaller cadets, Ventari, crystalline eyes wide, whispered, "Deathworlder reflexes. Impossible." Aria's tone stayed level. "Not reflex, training." The drones hovered closer, recording her from multiple angles. "Cadet Dren," one intoned, "please remain seated. The incident is under review." She nodded once. "I am seated." When she finally looked up, her expression was unreadable. He attacked first. Everyone saw. The crowd stayed silent. No one contradicted her. A few Drexians edged forward, torn between anger and disbelief. Their leader lay motionless on the floor, his massive frame somehow small now, fragile even. The arrogance that had filled the room minutes ago had evaporated, leaving only the sterile hum of environmental systems and the slow pulse of security lights. A Drexian lieutenant growled low. You murdered a division leader. Aria's gaze locked onto his. He made the choice. I warned him. He was unarmed. So was I. The reply landed like a weight. The lieutenant faltered, mouth opening, then closing again. Even he could see it, the imprint of Varkul's claws still fresh on her wrist. Two instructors entered through the far door. One a towering insectoid with translucent wings, the other a humanoid of pure light. They stopped at the threshold, absorbing the scene, the crowd, the body, the girl sitting perfectly still beside her untouched meal. What happened here? The light form asked, voice layered and resonant. A dozen voices tried to answer at once in different languages. The instructors silenced them with a raised hand. Aria's tone cut clean through the noise. He assaulted me. I defended myself. The insectoid tilted its head. Defended yourself how? She finally set down her datapad. Efficiently. The room remained heavy with disbelief. Some students averted their eyes. Others stared at her as though seeing humanity for the first time. The myth had become flesh. The instructors exchanged unreadable glances. One knelt beside Varkul, wings trembling faintly. Confirmed cervical fracture, instantaneous. Force calculation. The creature paused. Exceeds Drexian muscle capacity by 40%. A whisper rippled across the crowd. Aria stood now, smooth and unhurried. Her every motion radiated restraint, not pride. He died in 3 seconds. Less pain than he would have given anyone else. The insectoid straightened. You are aware, Cadet Dren, that this will have diplomatic repercussions? I'm aware, she said, voice calm. So were his actions. The instructors conferred quietly, voices low. One of the security drones turned its lens toward her again. Cadet Dren, you will come with us. She nodded once. Of course. As she walked through the silent hall, aliens stepped aside instinctively, giving her a wide berth. No one met her eyes. Even the Drexians remained frozen, processing what they'd witnessed. Behind her, the whispers began to spread. Hushed but frantic, she didn't even rise. Deathworld control, terrifying. Humans weren't exaggerating. Predators disguised as diplomats. By the time Aria reached the corridor, she could already sense the storm breaking beyond the walls. News traveled faster than light among the students. The footage would reach the outer colonies within hours, the Central Accord worlds by dawn. Inside the holding chamber, she stood quietly as holographic recorders replayed the scene. Frame by frame, the instructors analyzed it. Her motion measured in milliseconds, force output impossible for her size. One of them turned to her. How did you achieve that level of control? Aria's reply was simple. We had to, the instructor frowned. Meaning? Earth teaches discipline early, she said. On a death world, losing control gets you killed. Every breath, every motion matters. You learn not to waste either. Silence. Even the drones seemed to pause their whirring. The light-form instructor's glow dimmed slightly, a gesture akin to a sigh. You realize you've just confirmed every fear they have about your species. I confirmed their misunderstanding, Aria said softly. They think we're violent. We're survivors. There's a difference. Her words hung in the air long after she stopped speaking. After the review ended, they escorted her back toward her quarters. The corridors felt emptier than usual, shadows stretched by the soft pulse of station lights. Through the viewport windows, the storms of Thyrax 7 raged on, distant and uncaring. When the doors slid open, a small crowd waited at the far end, students of various species, silent, uncertain. Some bowed slightly as she passed. Respect or fear, it didn't matter. Both carried weight. Inside her dorm, she sat on the edge of her bunk, hands folded loosely in her lap. Her wrist still ached faintly where his claws had dug in. She looked at the faint bruising, then flexed her fingers. Nothing broken. Her reflection stared back at her from the viewport, calm, unshaken, but weary. I told him not to, she murmured. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. She opened it. A single line from the Academy command, footage verified. Self-defense confirmed. Case closed. Below that, another note, anonymous, unsigned. They're calling you the quiet Deathworlder. She read it twice, then closed the screen. Outside, lightning flared again, painting her face in white fire. For the first time that day, she allowed herself a small exhale of emotion, not regret, but the tired understanding that peace was never as simple as restraint. She whispered to the storms beyond, "We tried to show them we could be civilized. Maybe now they'll understand what we were restraining." In the mess hall below, maintenance drones had already cleaned the floor, polished the dented table, erased the blood. The academy's routine resumed, but the silence lingered in its halls. A shadow cast by memory. Every cadet who had seen it would remember. The girl who never stood, the predator who moved once, and the sound that silenced a galaxy. Across the networks, the footage spread like wildfire. Commentaries from dozens of species debated it. Was she a threat or a marvel? A monster or proof of human supremacy? And through all the noise, one quote circulated again and again, Aria's soft warning replayed endlessly in translated text across countless feeds. "You've touched a Deathworlder. Now you should stop." By the week's end, even the Galactic Council had seen it. The consensus was uneasy but clear. Humanity wasn't to be provoked. In her quarters, Aria sat beneath the faint hum of the artificial night. The datapad on her desk displayed a single glowing line of text she'd written for herself. "Control is the highest form of strength." She powered it down and looked once more at the storms, vast and eternal, moving without mercy but full of beauty. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We didn't start this, but they'll remember how we ended it." Outside, thunder rolled across Thyrax 7, a low growl echoing the heartbeat of a Deathworlder who had never needed to stand. The storm outside had not stopped in 3 days. It writhed over the surface of Thyrax 7 like a living thing, an endless dance of thunder and light that mirrored the unrest spreading through the galaxy. Within the polished corridors of Varkul Prime Academy, silence had become its own language. No one spoke when the human passed. Aria Dren had turned from curiosity into rumor, from rumor into symbol. Every student who had seen her in the cafeteria now spoke her name with the same caution one uses for a weapon that might still be loaded. She moved through the hallways with her usual calm, head slightly bowed, eyes forward. Behind her, whispers followed in fragmented translations. "Deathworlder, predator, too dangerous." The death of Zarkel Vorn had changed everything. Official reports labeled it self-defense, but the footage that raced across interstellar networks told a different story to those who wanted to see fear. The sight of a human killing a Drexian elite without leaving her seat unsettled every council in the Accord. The Academy administrators tried to contain the fallout. They called for inquiry meetings, reassurances, context. But context meant little when one image, a girl who never stood, played across 1,000 systems. Aria ignored it all. She had returned to her studies the next day, sitting in the same seat, in the same posture as if nothing had happened. It wasn't defiance. It was consistency. That morning, she stood before a mirror in her dorm, fastening the silver clasp of her cadet uniform. The faint bruise on her wrist had faded to yellow. Her reflection looked steady, but her eyes held something new, a shadow of exhaustion. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The door slid open to reveal Commander Relth, the Academy's head of security. A broad-shouldered being of mineral skin, his every step echoed authority. "Cadet Dren," he said, voice deep and measured. "You're being summoned to the Command Council." Aria nodded once, picking up her datapad. "I expected this." As they walked, the commander studied her from the corner of his eye. "Do you understand the gravity of what happened?" "I do. Do you feel remorse?" Aria looked at him, expression calm. "Would remorse bring him back?" He hesitated, then sighed. "No, but it might make others less afraid of you." "They should be afraid," she said quietly. "Not of me, but of what they made me do." They reached the council chamber, a domed room of glass and black alloy, suspended above the storm clouds. 12 holographic figures flickered around a circular table, representing different species of the Galactic Accord. Each projection glowed in its native hue: violet, amber, blue, green. In the center stood an empty chair. Aria took it. The chair's sensors read her vitals: steady pulse, low stress. She folded her hands and waited. The presiding counselor, a crystalline entity whose body refracted light like a prism, began. Cadet Dren, your actions on Cycle 219 have sparked significant unrest. The Drexian Dominion demands formal retribution. Aria's voice was even. He attacked me. Your own investigation confirmed it. Yes, the counselor said, tone tight, but perception outweighs proof. To them, a human killed a noble. They see insult, not justice. Aria met the flickering gaze of the holograms. Then perhaps they should learn the difference. Murmurs rippled through the council. A reptilian delegate hissed. You speak without fear, human. Do you think your species is beyond consequence? Aria turned her head slightly toward the voice. Fear isn't absence of understanding. It's management of it. We learned that on a world that tried to kill us every day. Commander Relth shifted beside her, uneasy at her bluntness, but the counselor gestured for silence. Another delegate leaned forward. A being of mist and light. You must understand, Cadet, that your actions have strengthened the myth of humanity's brutality. Entire colonies are calling for your removal from the Academy, and if I leave? Aria asked. Then perhaps calm will return. Aria shook her head once. Calm isn't peace. It's the pause before someone else dies trying to test us. The words hung in the air like static. Finally, the counselor spoke again. The Academy is divided. Some believe you are proof that humans belong here, controlled, disciplined. Others fear you confirm every warning the Drexians ever gave. I can't be both, she said softly. You already are. For several seconds, no one spoke. The storm outside flashed across the glass dome, lightning painting the room in cold light. The counselor continued, voice lower. You'll remain under probation. Restricted quarters. No combat training sessions until further notice. Understood. Relth's jaw tightened. She's being punished for surviving? This is politics, Commander, the counselor said. Not justice. Aria rose slowly. Permission to speak freely? The counselor hesitated. Granted, she looked around the table. You're afraid because you saw what we're capable of. But that's not new. You've always been afraid of what doesn't kneel. Humanity doesn't want your wars. We don't want your thrones. We just want to be left alone to learn. But every time we extend peace, someone like Zarkel decides to test the monster in the cage. Her voice never rose, yet each word struck with quiet precision. The crystalline counselor said softly, And you think restraint makes you civilized? No, Aria said. Restraint makes us human. The silence afterward felt heavier than the storm. After the meeting, Commander Relth walked with her through the dim corridors. You shouldn't have said that, he muttered. They already made up their minds, she replied. Words don't change fear. He paused at the junction leading to her quarters. For what it's worth, I don't think you were wrong. Aria nodded once in acknowledgement, then continued alone. That evening, she sat by the viewport, watching lightning drift across the clouds below. A message notification blinked on her datapad. It was from an unknown sender, encrypted. She opened it carefully. Earth Command acknowledges your restraint. Directive follows. Continue enrollment. Observation priority high. Maintain discipline. Do not provoke engagement. Humanity watches. She stared at the message for a long time before closing it. The corridor outside echoed with soft footsteps. A figure hesitated by her doorway. A tall alien girl from the aquatic species Tal. She looked nervous but determined. Cadet Dren? Aria turned. Yes? The Tal's gills fluttered faintly. I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing them that control isn't weakness. She glanced away. Some of us needed to see that. Aria studied her for a moment. Then learn from it. Control isn't for power. It's for peace. The alien nodded and left quickly, her steps fading into the corridor hum. Alone again, Aria leaned back in her chair. The academy lights dimmed as the night cycle began. Outside, the storms rolled on, immense and timeless. She thought of Earth, the forests, the frozen seas, the weight of gravity that forged her kind. She missed its chaos, its honesty. Here, everything was polished and false, the tension always hidden behind diplomacy. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her wrist, tracing the faint scar. Not a wound, but a reminder. A voice echoed from memory, her mentor's, calm and old. Strength isn't in what you destroy. It's in what you could destroy and choose not to. She closed her eyes. Down in the Academy's archives, technicians cataloged the footage of the cafeteria incident for training and cultural study. They labeled it Human Response Protocol, Controlled Elimination. The file was locked under restricted clearance, but everyone knew it existed. Within a month, whispers had turned into a saying across the outer colonies. Don't test a Deathworlder's silence. In the darkness of her dorm, Aria whispered to herself, not as warning, but as prayer. Maybe one day, they'll understand we didn't come here to fight. Thunder rolled again, long and low. In its echo, she heard the truth of her species, the quiet defiance of a people born on a world that tried to kill them, who learned to endure, to adapt, to restrain. She looked out at the swirling clouds of Thyrax 7, her reflection faint in the glass, and said softly, "Until they do, I'll keep sitting." The lightning flashed once more, painting her in silver light, the calm at the center of the storm, the Deathworld girl who had never needed to stand to be feared.